The book of Exodus begins in the shadow of empire. The descendants of Jacob, who had come to Egypt as guests, were now a nation of slaves. A new pharaoh, consumed by fear of their numbers, sought to break their spirit with bitter labor, building his grand cities from mud and straw. But the more he oppressed them, the more they multiplied. In his rage, Pharaoh commanded a horror. Every newborn Hebrew boy was to be drowned in the Nile. But in the face of tyranny, courage took root. A Levite woman named Jochebed bore a son, and seeing he was beautiful, she hid him for 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she wove a basket of reeds, sealing it with faith, and laid her child upon the waters of the Nile, entrusting him to the currents of providence. He was found by none other than Pharaoh's daughter, who took pity on him. Through the quick thinking of his sister Miriam, the boy was returned to his own mother's arms to be nursed, before being adopted into the very house that had ordered his death. He was named Moses, and he was raised as a prince of Egypt. He learned the wisdom and warfare of the world's greatest power, but he could never forget the cries of his people. One day his royal composure shattered when he saw a taskmaster beating one of his brethren. In a torrent of fury, he struck the Egyptian down. But secrets do not stay buried in the sand. When his act was discovered, Moses the prince became Moses the fugitive. He fled for his life, trading the silks of the palace for the dust of the wilderness. For 40 years he lived in exile, a humble shepherd in the land of Midian, his past a distant echo. But the groans of the slaves had not been in vain. Their cry rose to the heavens, and God remembered his covenant. On the far side of the desert, at Horeb, the mountain of God, the Lord appeared to Moses in a fire that burned but did not consume. From the heart of the flame, God called him by name, commissioning him to return to the land of his birth, to stand before the mightiest man on earth and declare, "Let my people go." Moses, humbled by years in the wilderness, was crippled by doubt. He was a man of no account, slow of speech, a forgotten fugitive. But God answered his doubt with power. He revealed his holy name, "I am who I am," and armed Moses with miraculous signs. The staff in his hand, once used to guide sheep, would now be used to command a king. The exile was over. The prophet was called. The great confrontation was about to begin. Aaron returned to the throne of Egypt, not as supplicants, but as ambassadors of the God of heaven. "Thus says the Lord," they declared, "let my people go." Pharaoh, the most powerful man on earth, scoffed at this unseen God and hardened his heart. So began the great contest of wills. The staff was thrown down, the serpent of God swallowing the lesser magic of Pharaoh's court. But pride is blind. The sacred Nile was turned to blood. The land was overrun with frogs. When Pharaoh's sorcerers failed to conjure the gnats from the dust, they confessed to their king, "This is the finger of God." Yet Pharaoh would not yield. With each judgment, God drew a line in the sand, a distinction between the suffering of the Egyptians and the safety of his people in Goshen. Pestilence wiped out their livestock. Boils afflicted their bodies. A storm of fire and ice ravaged the land, followed by locusts that devoured all that was left. Then came a darkness so absolute it could be felt, isolating every Egyptian in a prison of stillness and silence, while the Israelites had light. After 9 plagues had shattered the wealth and spirit of his kingdom, Pharaoh made his final, fatal threat. But the final judgment would not be stayed. God gave Israel a command. A lamb was to be slain, its blood a sign of faith painted on their homes. For on that night, death itself would walk the streets of Egypt, passing over every house protected by the blood. While the Egyptians slept, Israel ate the first Passover, dressed and ready for a journey. Then at midnight a great cry arose, for in every Egyptian home, from the palace to the dungeon, the firstborn was dead. A broken king, shrouded in grief, begged Israel to leave. After 4 centuries of servitude, the chains were shattered. The great Exodus had begun. It was not the end of the journey, but the beginning. The Lord went ahead of them, a pillar of cloud by day to guide their way, and a pillar of fire by night to give them light. But back in Egypt, Pharaoh's heart, once broken, had hardened again into stone. Consumed by rage at the loss of his slaves, he rallied his army, his finest chariots, and pursued Israel to the shores of the Red Sea. Trapped between the sea and the might of the Egyptian army, the people cried out in terror. But Moses declared, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." That night, a miracle unfolded. The pillar of God moved between the camps, a barrier of darkness to Egypt, but a beacon of light to Israel. As Moses stretched his hand over the water, a great wind tore the sea apart, creating a dry path between two towering walls of water. All night, the nation of Israel walked on the seabed, delivered from their pursuers. As dawn broke, the Egyptians charged in after them, but God threw their army into chaos. Then, as the last Israelite reached the far shore, Moses stretched out his hand again. The walls of water collapsed, and the sea returned to its full strength, swallowing Pharaoh and his entire army. On the shore of their salvation, the people of Israel sang. Their journey continued into the vast wilderness, a place of testing and reliance. God provided bread from heaven, called manna, and brought water from a stone. Finally, they arrived at the foot of Mount Sinai. There, the Lord descended upon the mountain in fire and smoke, with thunder, lightning, and the blast of a trumpet, and the whole mountain shook violently. From the midst of the fire, God spoke the 10 Commandments, the foundation of his covenant. The people, trembling in awe and terror, had heard the voice of their God. The law was being given. From the heart of the fire, God spoke the 10 Commandments. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor your father and your mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony. You shall not covet. The people, terrified, stood at a distance, and Moses drew near to the thick darkness where God was. For 40 days and 40 nights, he remained on the mountain, receiving the law and the divine blueprint for a holy sanctuary, a place where God might dwell among his people. But while the law was being given in heaven, it was being broken on earth. The people, faithless and impatient, compelled Aaron to fashion a god from their own gold. They built a calf and bowed down to the work of their own hands, forgetting their deliverer. When Moses came down from the mountain with the 2 tablets of the testimony, tablets written with the finger of God, and saw the sin of the camp, his anger burned hot. He threw the tablets from his hands, shattering the covenant at the foot of the mountain. In the aftermath of judgment, Moses the prophet became Moses the intercessor. He stood in the breach, pleading with God for his stiff-necked people, even offering his own soul for their forgiveness. Because of his love, God relented and renewed his covenant. Moses returned from the mountain with new tablets, his face so radiant with the glory of God that he had to be veiled. The repentant people now brought their offerings with joyful hearts, and under the guidance of craftsmen filled with the Spirit of God, they built the tabernacle. It was a masterpiece of devotion, perfect in every detail. When the work was finished, the cloud of God's presence covered the tent, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. The God of the universe had made his home among them. The journey was not over, but they would no longer travel alone.